Let's take a look at how type can actually create color on your format. Typographic color refers to the density of typographic elements and the perceived gray value. This is the overall feeling of the lightness and darkness on the page. Color is affected by the typeface, horizontal and vertical space, and the amount of text on the page. Achieving an even sense of color is generally ideal, but not always appropriate. Too much evenness is dull and can result in a gray, static design. Typographic contrast and depth of color create an active, rich composition with dark and light values. A gray page can create confusion by not giving the reader any clue as to the importance of a story or whether two separate stories on the page are related to each other. An effective typographic aid in the organization of page is to add color simply by affecting how you place the text on your page. Let's look at a couple of examples. You can see in here the things that actually make color. The color of a typeface is determined by a combination of details. It's the space between the letters, the space between the lines, and the spaces built into each character. The X height, the thickness of the strokes, the serifs or lack of. Things like this are all going to affect the color of the type. A light, airy typeface with lots of letter spacing and line spacing creates a very light color and texture, and you can see that in some of the examples that we have right here. A bold sans serif, tightly packed, creates a dark color with a different sort of texture, and you can see that right here. View the following samples that I have to see some of these things in play. You can improve the appeal of your designs and pages by adding some color to the subheads and heads, and this can be achieved by using a typeface with a heavier weight, or if you set a pull quote in a different color. The page becomes more visually appealing and makes it more likely to cause readers to stop and read the content. A change in color can also help to organize information. And obviously there's no real change in each of these boxes. It just kind of is illustrating the different font and how the line spacing is going to affect it. So here we have the same actual font, but the line spacing is set 3 points higher in this one right here, and you can see the feel of these two boxes is vastly different. Here I have the exact same font, but this is the Helvetica Neue Ultra Light as opposed to just regular. Same point size, same line spacing, but it definitely has a different feel in this box over here on the lower left than this one right here. This is Helvetica Neue Condensed Bold, and it again has a completely different feel. Its line spacing is the same as this one up here in the upper left-hand corner, but because of the fact that it's a condensed and bold font, it takes up less room and it's darker, and that's the color of this text. You can see using a script font here, this is Dear Sarah, and it creates its own sort of color on the page. Over here, this is an example of impact set at 11 points with 13 point line spacing. It's basically the same font size and line spacing as this one right here, but you can see because the font is different how it's a little bit darker, it's a little thicker font. And here's some other examples right here. This is Donatora, which is a nice serif font, and this is kind of standard size and line spacing. And this right here is Egyptine, which is a slab serif. You can see even though that this is set at 11 point and 13 point line spacing, 11 on 13, it's a lot bigger than the Donatora. The X height is much bigger in the slab serif than in this serif right here, and it gives for a totally different feel and a totally different color on the page. Here you can see that in this first example there is no real color that makes any of the elements kind of jump out at you. I mean, the headlines are definitely, bolder, but they're basically just the same font and treated the same way. It's definitely kind of difficult to tell that these are actually two separate stories, whereas if you look at the example over here on the right, you can see that the color attracts your attention and makes it very clear that these are two separate stories. The headlines have, a kind of a uniform feel to them, and they jump off the page with the reverse type on the black background. It makes it very bold. The other thing that helps to separate these stories is the line spacing in between the actual bits of text. Here the line spacing is a little bit tighter, size of the font is smaller. Here the size of the font is slightly larger and the line spacing is much thicker. Here we're using a sans serif font and here a serif font is used. But you can see visually the actual color that's on the page. If you just kind of squint your eyes and look at the page, it's much different than what's shown here. So definitely think about how you use type and how the type itself is going to color the page, if you will, and what type of feel that is going to add to the design. It can make a big impact, just the type of font you're using and the weight and the line spacing and the color that it's going to just create just from being on the page. That can affect the design quite a bit.